I was 3 days away from living my lifelong dream, exploring Greece with the man I loved. The tickets were printed, the suitcases half packed, and my heart overflowed with anticipation. But when I woke up that Thursday morning, everything changed. The apartment was too quiet. His things were gone. And on the nightstand, a hastily scribbled note waited for me. While I was planning our future, he was planning his, with her, a woman whose name I didn't even know existed until that moment. And the worst part? I had just spent every penny of my savings on that trip. My name is Emma. I'm 28 years old, and I've always been one of those people who believes in happy endings. You know those women who watch romantic movies and sigh at the end? That was me. I worked for 5 years as a graphic designer at a small company, saving every penny to fulfill my biggest dream, visiting the Greek islands. It wasn't just about the postcard-perfect landscapes or the turquoise sea. It was about proving to myself that I could achieve something big. And when I met Daniel, I thought I had found someone to share that achievement with. I was wrong. Completely wrong. It all started about 8 months ago. Daniel and I had been together for 2 years, and our relationship seemed solid. We had been living together for a year, in a small but cozy apartment in Brooklyn. Daniel worked as a systems analyst, and I worked in design. Our routines fit together well, or at least that's what I thought. The idea of the trip came up on a cold April night. We were on the couch watching a documentary about Greece when Daniel turned to me and said, "Why don't we go? You always talk about this dream. Let's go together." My heart raced. I had been saving money for years, but there was always something holding me back from taking that final step. Fear of traveling alone, insecurity, 1,000 excuses. Having Daniel by my side seemed like the perfect solution. I started planning everything with an almost childlike excitement. I researched every island, every hotel, every restaurant. I made Excel spreadsheets with daily itineraries. I bought travel guides and learned some phrases in Greek. Daniel participated in the conversations, gave opinions, smiled when I showed him photos of the places we would visit. He seemed as excited as I was, or he pretended really well. We bought the tickets in June. It was almost $7,000 just for both of our flights. But I didn't care. It was my dream. Our dream. We booked hotels in Santorini, Mykonos, and Athens. I calculated every expense, organized every detail. The trip was scheduled for early September. We had just 3 months left when we bought everything. It was around that time that I started noticing small changes. Daniel spent more time on his phone. He smiled at the screen in a way he didn't smile at me. When I asked, he said it was work or friends. I believed him because I wanted to believe, because the alternative was too painful to consider. In July, Daniel started going out more. Happy hours with coworkers, meetups with friends I never met, meetings that stretched late into the night. He would come home late, tired, distant. When I tried to talk about the trip, he would change the subject, or say he was too tired to discuss it. But I insisted on believing it was just work stress. August arrived, and the excitement about the trip should have been at its peak. Only 1 month left, but Daniel seemed increasingly absent. He stopped sleeping with his arms around me. He stopped kissing me in the morning before leaving for work. Our dinners together became rare. When we were in the same room, it felt like we were on different planets. I tried to talk. I asked if everything was okay, if something was bothering him. Daniel always said everything was normal, that I was overreacting, that it was just a heavy work phase. And I, desperate to believe, swallowed every lie as if it were truth. 2 weeks before the trip, Daniel said he needed to travel for work. 3 days in Boston for an important meeting. I thought it was strange because he had never mentioned this trip before, but he assured me it was something that came up last minute. He was gone for 4 days, not 3. When he came back, he was different, colder, more distant, as if a part of him had stayed in Boston. 1 week before the trip, on a Tuesday night, I was excited organizing the last things. I separated clothes, checked documents, printed hotel vouchers. Daniel was in the bedroom, on his phone as always. I went in to show him the beautiful dress I had bought to wear in Santorini. He barely looked. He just said, "Looks nice," without taking his eyes off the screen. It was that night that reality started to sink in. Something was deeply wrong, and I could no longer pretend I didn't see it. I waited for him to fall asleep, and did something I had never done before. I grabbed his phone. My hand trembled as I typed the password, the same password he had used for years. But it didn't work. He had changed it. My stomach turned. I spent the night awake, lying next to a man I no longer recognized. feeling a growing fear take over me. What was happening? Who was the Daniel sleeping beside me? On Wednesday morning, he left early as usual. I called his office, pretending to be a client, and asked if I could speak with Daniel. The receptionist said he wasn't there, that he had taken the day off. I hung up with trembling hands. He had lied to me. He left the house saying he was going to work, but he wasn't at work. I went to work that day on autopilot. My mind was elsewhere, trying to piece together a puzzle I didn't want to solve. When I came home that evening, Daniel was there, acting normally, asking how my day was. I lied and said everything was fine. He lied and said work was busy. We slept that night like two strangers sharing a bed. On Thursday morning, I woke up late. I had taken the day off work to start doing the final packing. The trip was in 3 days. 3 days until we would be on a plane to Athens. 3 days until my dream would finally come true. But something inside me felt broken. I got out of bed and noticed Daniel's side was already cold. He must have left early. I walked to the kitchen to make coffee, and that's when I saw it. The apartment seemed different, emptier. I couldn't immediately identify what was missing, but something was off. I walked to the closet. Half of Daniel's clothes were gone. His favorite jacket, his good shoes. The suitcase he had bought specifically for the trip was missing. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I ran back to the bedroom. His toiletries from the bathroom were gone. His laptop, his chargers, the book he was reading, everything, gone. And then I saw it. A white piece of paper on the nightstand, folded in half. My name written on the outside in his handwriting. I picked it up with shaking hands and unfolded it. Emma, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I can't go on this trip. I can't keep pretending. I met someone else. Her name is Jessica. I know this is the worst possible timing, but I can't keep lying to you. I'm moving out. I've been seeing her for 3 months. I'm sorry about the trip. I'm sorry about everything. Daniel. I read the note once, twice, 3 times. The words didn't make sense. They were in English. I understood each individual word, but together they formed something incomprehensible. This couldn't be real. This had to be a nightmare. I sat on the bed, still holding the note, and the reality started to crash over me in waves. He was gone. He had left me 3 days before our trip, 3 days before my dream. And he had been cheating on me for 3 months. 3 months. That meant it started in May, after we had bought the tickets, after we had planned everything. He had looked me in the eyes every day for 3 months and lied. The tears started falling before I even realized I was crying. They came in huge, gasping sobs that shook my entire body. I cried for the relationship I had lost. I cried for the trust that had been shattered. I cried for the trip that was now ruined. I cried for the woman I had been yesterday, who still believed in us. I don't know how long I sat there crying. It could have been minutes or hours. Time had lost all meaning. Eventually the tears stopped, leaving me hollow and empty. I looked around the bedroom we had shared, seeing the spaces where his things used to be. It was like he had been erased from my life, but the outline of his presence remained. My phone rang. It was my best friend, Sarah. I answered without thinking. Hey, are you excited? 3 more days. Her voice was so full of joy that it hurt. Sarah, my voice cracked. He left. There was a long silence on the other end. What do you mean he left? Daniel, he left. He's been cheating on me. He's gone. The trip is in 3 days, and he's gone. I'm coming over right now. Sarah arrived 20 minutes later with wine, tissues, and chocolate. She held me while I cried again, while I showed her the note, while I tried to make sense of something that made no sense. That absolute coward, Sarah said, her voice shaking with anger. 3 days before the trip? What kind of person does that? I spent everything on this trip, I whispered. Every penny I had saved, the flights, the hotels, everything. It's all non-refundable, I checked. What are you going to do? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. We sat in silence for a while, drinking wine, the weight of everything crushing down on me. My dream trip was now a nightmare. The man I loved was gone. My savings were gone. Everything was gone. You have to go, Sarah said suddenly. I looked at her like she was crazy. What? You have to go on the trip. By yourself. Sarah, I can't. I can't go to Greece alone after this. Yes, you can. You have to. You've been saving for this for 5 years. You've been dreaming about it your entire adult life. Don't let him take that from you too. He's already taken enough. I can't afford to waste the money, but I also can't face it alone. You're stronger than you think, Emma. And you know what? This trip was never about him. It was always about you, about proving you could do something big. So prove it. Go. I wanted to argue, but deep down, I knew she was right. If I didn't go, Daniel would have taken everything from me. My relationship, my trust, and my dream. I couldn't let him have all three. Okay, I whispered. Okay, I'll go. The next 2 days were a blur. I finished packing, my hands moving on autopilot. I called Daniel multiple times, but he never answered. He had blocked me on everything. Social media, messaging apps, everything. Like I had never existed. I found Jessica's Instagram through some detective work. She was beautiful, blonde, tall, athletic, everything I wasn't. Her profile was public, and I tortured myself looking through her photos. There was one from 2 weeks ago, at a coffee shop I recognized. It was near Daniel's office. The caption said, "Best coffee date ever," with a heart emoji. I felt sick. I wanted to message her, to tell her who he really was, what he had done. But what was the point? She probably knew he had a girlfriend. She probably didn't care. Or maybe she didn't know. Maybe he had lied to her too. I would never know. Sarah came with me to the airport. She hugged me tight before I went through security. "You're going to have an amazing time," she said. "You're going to come back a different person. Stronger. This is your journey now. Not his. Yours." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without crying again. The flight to Athens was long and lonely. The empty seat next to me where Daniel should have been felt like a physical presence. Every time I looked at it, I felt the loss all over again. But I forced myself to watch movies, to read, to distract myself from the pain. When we landed in Athens, it was early morning. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I collected my luggage, went through customs, and found a taxi to take me to my hotel. Athens was beautiful. Even in my broken state, I could see that. The ancient ruins, the bustling streets, the warmth of the people. Our hotel was in a charming neighborhood near the Acropolis. I checked in alone, went to the room Daniel and I were supposed to share, and cried again. But then I did something I hadn't expected. I washed my face, changed into comfortable clothes, and went outside. If I was going to be here, I was going to actually be here. Not hiding in a hotel room crying over a man who didn't deserve my tears. I spent that first day walking. I walked to the Acropolis and climbed to the Parthenon. I stood there, looking out over the city, feeling the ancient stones beneath my feet. People had been coming here for thousands of years, experiencing joy and heartbreak and everything in between. My pain was just one small story in an endless human tapestry. Something shifted in me that day. The pain was still there, raw and real. But underneath it, I felt something else. Possibility. Freedom. This trip was mine now. I could go wherever I wanted, see whatever I wanted, without having to compromise or consider anyone else's preferences. I ate dinner alone at a small taverna, and the owner, an elderly Greek woman named Maria, asked if I was okay. I told her the story, and she listened with kind eyes. "Men," she said, shaking her head. "Sometimes they are foolish. But you are here. You are strong. You will be okay." She gave me extra dessert on the house and told me about the best places to visit in Athens. Her kindness made me cry again, but these tears felt different, cleaner somehow. Over the next few days in Athens, I fell into a rhythm. I woke up early, ate breakfast at a cafe near my hotel, and spent my days exploring. I visited the ancient Agora, the temple of Olympian Zeus, the National Archaeological Museum. I took a cooking class and learned to make moussaka. I met other travelers, some solo like me, some in groups. Everyone had a story. One evening, I met a woman named Claire from Australia at a rooftop bar. She was in her 50s, traveling alone after her divorce. We talked for hours about life, about heartbreak, about finding yourself again after everything falls apart. "Here's what I learned," she said, looking out over the illuminated Acropolis. "You can't let someone else's bad choices define your story. Yes, he hurt you. Yes, he made a terrible decision. But that's his character, not yours. Your character is shown by being here right now, taking this trip alone, refusing to let his actions destroy your dream." Her words stayed with me. After 3 days in Athens, I took the ferry to Santorini. Standing on the deck as we approached the island, seeing the white buildings cascading down the cliffs, the famous blue domes, the crystal blue water. I felt my breath catch. It was even more beautiful than the photos. I checked into my hotel in Oya, the room with the private balcony overlooking the caldera. This was supposed to be our romantic room, the place where we would watch the famous Santorini sunset together. Instead, I watched it alone on the first night, and I cried. But I also felt grateful. Grateful that I was here, that I had made it, that I hadn't let him take this from me. The next morning, I decided to do something bold. I rented an ATV and drove around the entire island. I stopped at black sand beaches, at ancient ruins, at small villages where tourists rarely went. I got lost several times and didn't care. I ate at tiny local restaurants where no one spoke English, and I had to point at the menu randomly. The food was always delicious. At one beach, I met a Greek man named Nikos, who was teaching his young daughter to swim. We chatted, and he told me about his life on the island, about how tourism had changed things, about his hopes for his daughter's future. His wife brought me homemade wine and insisted I stay for lunch. We sat on the beach, eating fresh fish and laughing, and for the first time since Daniel left, I felt genuinely happy. That evening, I went to watch the sunset from the famous spot in Oya where tourists gather. It was crowded, but I found a place to stand. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in impossible shades of orange, pink, and purple, I thought about Daniel. I wondered if he ever really planned to come, or if he had known all along that he would leave me. I wondered if he felt guilty. I wondered if Jessica made him happy. And then I stopped wondering, because it didn't matter. He had made his choice, and I had made mine. I chose to be here. I chose to not let his betrayal destroy me. I chose to keep dreaming. After the sunset, I walked back to my hotel, stopping at a small jewelry shop. I bought myself a silver bracelet with a Greek key pattern, a reminder of this trip, of this moment, of the woman I was becoming. The days in Santorini blurred together in the best way. I hiked from Fira to Oya, stopping at every viewpoint to take photos. I visited a winery and learned about volcanic soil and ancient grape varieties. I took a boat tour to the volcanic islands in the middle of the caldera and swam in hot springs. I ate at expensive restaurants and cheap street food stalls, trying everything. One afternoon, sitting at a cafe, I opened my laptop and looked at my bank account. It was nearly empty. This trip had cost me everything I had saved, but looking at the empty balance, I felt no regret. Some things are worth more than money. I had been ignoring my phone mostly, but that night I checked it. There were messages from friends, from my mom asking how the trip was going, and there was one message from Daniel. I know you're in Greece. I'm sorry for how I handled things. I hope you're okay. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to unleash all my hurt and anger, to tell him exactly how much damage he had caused. But what would that achieve? He knew what he had done, and anything I said would just give him space in my mind that he no longer deserved. Instead, I deleted the message. Then I blocked his number. I didn't need his apologies or his guilt. This trip, this experience, this healing journey was mine. He had no place in it. From Santorini, I took another ferry to Mykonos. The vibe was completely different. Where Santorini was romantic and peaceful, Mykonos was vibrant and energetic. The streets of Mykonos town were a maze of white buildings, bright blue doors, and countless cats lounging in the sun. I spent my days on beaches with crystal clear water, Paradise Beach, Super Paradise, Elia Beach. I swam, read books, and let the sun soak into my skin. I went out at night to bars and clubs, dancing until dawn with people from all over the world. I felt young and free in a way I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. One night, I met a group of women from the UK who were celebrating a birthday. They adopted me into their group, and we spent the evening laughing and dancing. One of them, a woman named Beth, was also going through a breakup. To men who don't deserve us, she toasted, raising her glass. To becoming the women we're meant to be, I added. We clinked glasses and danced under the stars, and in that moment, surrounded by strangers who felt like friends, I realized something important. I was going to be okay, more than okay. I was going to be better than I was before. My last day in Greece, I woke up early and walked to a quiet beach. The sun was just rising, and I had the whole place to myself. I stood in the water, feeling the gentle waves lap at my ankles, and I thought about everything that had happened. Daniel leaving had felt like the end of the world, and in some ways, it was. It was the end of the world where I was someone's girlfriend, where I was planning a future with him, where I believed in our story. But it was also the beginning of something new, a world where I was solely responsible for my own happiness, where I got to choose my own adventure. I had come to Greece to prove I could do something big, and I had, but not in the way I originally thought. I hadn't proven it by having a perfect romantic vacation with my boyfriend. I had proven it by coming here alone, by surviving heartbreak, by refusing to let someone else's bad choices ruin my dreams. I pulled out my phone and took a selfie. My hair was messy from the sea breeze, my face makeup free, my eyes clear. I looked different than I had at the start of this trip. Stronger, more sure of myself. I posted it to Instagram with a simple caption, "Found myself in Greece." The flight home was bittersweet. I was sad to leave this beautiful place, but I was also ready to go home and start rebuilding my life, ready to figure out what came next. When I landed back in New York, Sarah was waiting for me at the airport. She took one look at me and smiled. "You look different," she said. "I am different," I replied. We went back to my apartment, the one that Daniel and I had shared. He had sent someone to collect the last of his things while I was gone. The empty spaces where his furniture had been felt like open wounds at first. But as Sarah and I rearranged my remaining furniture, hung new pictures, bought plants and new throw pillows, those spaces started to feel like opportunities instead of losses. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned, reconnected with friends I had neglected, and spent time figuring out who Emma was outside of a relationship. Some days were hard. Some days I still cried, but those days became less frequent. I heard through mutual friends that Daniel and Jessica were still together, that they had moved in together. Part of me felt the sting of that, but a bigger part of me felt grateful. Grateful that I had discovered who he really was before I had wasted any more time on him. Grateful that I had been forced to take that trip alone. Grateful for everything I had learned about myself. 3 months after I got back from Greece, I was promoted at work. My boss said that something had changed in me, that I seemed more confident, more willing to take risks. She was right. Greece had changed me. Not the country itself, though it was magical, but the experience of surviving something I thought would destroy me and coming out stronger on the other side. I started saving money again. Not for Greece this time, for wherever life would take me next. Maybe Peru to see Machu Picchu. Maybe Japan to see the cherry blossoms. Maybe nowhere. Maybe I would use the money for something completely different. The point wasn't the destination. It was the knowledge that I could choose it myself. 1 year after the trip, I went on a date. A real one. With someone new. A man named Michael who was kind and funny and present. I was nervous, terrified even, of opening my heart again. But I did it anyway, because that's what we do. We risk. We hope. We trust again, even after we've been hurt. Did it work out with Michael? That's another story. But the point is that I was ready to try, ready to believe in happiness again, ready to write a new chapter. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that morning when I woke up to find Daniel gone, how devastated I was, how completely broken I felt. If someone had told me then that I would look back on that moment as a gift, I would have thought they were crazy. But in a strange way, it was a gift. It was the push I needed to discover my own strength, to learn that I didn't need someone else to make my dreams come true, to understand that the most important relationship I would ever have was the one with myself. The bracelet I bought in Santorini still sits on my wrist every day. People ask me about it sometimes, and I tell them a simplified version of the story. But the full story, the real story, is written in my heart. It's a story about betrayal and heartbreak, yes, but more importantly, it's a story about resilience, about self-discovery, about refusing to let someone else's actions define you. Daniel thought he was leaving me for someone better, but really, he just cleared the path for me to become someone better. Someone who knows her own worth, someone who can stand on her own, someone who can travel the world solo, and not just survive, but thrive. So yes, while I was preparing for the trip of my dreams, my boyfriend disappeared with someone else. And yes, it almost destroyed me, but almost isn't the same as actually. I'm still here. I'm still dreaming. I'm still traveling, both literally and figuratively, toward the life I want to live. And that ultimately is the best revenge. Not anger or bitterness, but pure, genuine happiness. The kind of happiness that comes from within, that doesn't depend on anyone else. The kind of happiness I found on a beach in Greece, watching the sunrise alone, and realizing that alone didn't have to mean lonely. It could mean free.